So in the past 7 years, we have moved from place to place, and every place and location that the Lord brought us to, there's always an emphasis and there's always a learning point that eventually became the foundation of who we are today. And somehow the Lord will use phrases to kind of anchor us, to serve as a lens in the way we look at the scriptures, in the way that we move, the way that we do things, the way that we serve. So I remember the first place, the birthplace of Burning Hearts, was in this little shop house called Smith Street. And it is actually above the Loft Cafe. And that was the first place where we started our worship and prayer nights. In that place, the phrase that the Lord gave to us was from a harlot to a bride. That was the lens of understanding our eternal identity as a bride, and He's the bridegroom. And the whole bridal paradigm has still today has been a bedrock of who we are and what we do to cultivate the life of intimacy, to long for His return, and to just come to a place where we'll no longer wrestle with His heart, but we'll become one with Him. So shortly after that, we moved into this space in Lion Building, a huge industrial space where we gave ourselves 12 hours, 2 days to just sing and to minister to God. And the phrase that the Lord was giving to us was to minister before the audience of one. It's in that context the Lord actually taught us what it means to be a priest. And our focus is more than to minister to people. He actually helped us to cultivate a life where we learn to focus our attention to live before the eyes of one, that He is the only audience that we minister and sing to. So about a year later, the Lord just kind of moved us out to this space in 111 Somerset around a youth hub. And when the Lord moved us there, the phrase that He gave us is, in the midst of all the options, that we will choose God. And we've actually seen how the Lord brought in young people to stand before Him, to be found in His presence, to love on Him, to open up the scriptures and to sing, for 21 months. And that's where we also found ourselves having a voice, to reach the young people in the nation, to call them into this life of consecration, in this life of fascination, to be captivated by the beauty of Jesus and to give themselves to that place of just worship and prayer. And also it's in that context the Lord gave us a vision of Malachi 1:11, where it is from the rising of the sun to the setting that our worship and our prayer is actually releasing a witness that will make great the name of God, that the nations will actually see the greatness of God. And the Lord just gave us another perspective of the 111 or 111. It's Acts chapter 1 verse 11. It's about the Son of Man coming back on the clouds again. And the Lord just kind of weave in the two storyline of establishing night-and-day prayer and how it's going to hasten the return of Jesus. And thus that's also where we begin to have a vision to labor for the return of Jesus. So shortly after 21 months, we moved into the financial hub of the city in Sister Street, and that's where the Lord gave us the phrase to exalt God above mammon. And we know that Singapore's glory is in our wealth, is in our finance. And I believe that even as we're there to lift up the name of Jesus through our songs, to make a space for people to come in, to spend their time and their life to just sing to God and to exalt Him. It's a statement in itself where we say, God, you are more beautiful than gold, you are more beautiful than silver. In fact, all that we have belongs to you, and freely we have received, freely we will give it back to you. And we believe that the Lord has given us a paradigm shift in the way we look at money, and we know that all that we have is all unto building Him a resting place so that He can get all the glory. So in August 2018, the Lord stirred our hearts to call for a 21-day fast in our community to contend for understanding. In light of all that was happening in Singapore, where the whole emphasis of Singapore being in Antioch, the Lord was stirring our hearts to ask Him for understanding rather than we trying to interpret the prophecy based on our own understanding. And so we spent 21 days together every night, read the book of Daniel, to pray through the book of Daniel, and to just allow the Lord to take His words to speak to us and to give us clarity in terms of what He's doing, not just in our nation, but in the world. Through the 21-day fast, the Lord began to give us two phrases. So the first phrase that the Lord gave to us was this, that I will give you a place of rest to establish a community of forerunners for the nation. We felt that the Lord is actually calling us to believe for a permanent space where we can build a home that's dedicated for worship and prayer, to cultivate messengers who carry the spirit of the forerunner. And because of that, God gave us a second phrase, and it says 7 years of plenty for 7 years of famine. And right there and then we know that the Lord is calling us to a place of preparation, to be that people of understanding who will give time to eat the scroll, who will understand what is the will of God in our time, in our generation, that they will be bold in their proclamation because they understood the plans of God. And so based on the two phrases, we knew that we are in a season of transition, that God is inviting us to move, to search, and thus we actually found a place in the southern part of Singapore at 66 Kampong Bugis, and this is where I am right now. We are in the midst of renovation, and this is going to be the space where the Lord has given to us to build a family, to build a community for the purpose of preparation. So right now we are at the 7th year mark. I believe it is that promise of a place of rest. Isaiah 66 was the scriptures that God gave to us when we stepped foot into this place in 66 Kampong Bugis. And it says, heaven is my throne, the earth is my footstool. Where is the place of rest that you have built for me? All these things my hands has made, but on this one will I look, those who are broken and contrite in spirit, and those who will tremble at my word. And I believe for the next 7 years, the thing that the Lord wants to do with us in this place, first and foremost, is to raise a family. So our heart is this: in all that we do in this leap of faith, to create a space in Singapore to contend for 9-day prayer and worship, it's all unto the fact that we can be found faithful, so that the generations who is to come will find faith. If the Lord does not return in our lifetime, in our generation, my prayer is that our labor of faith and our faithfulness will give courage and strength to the generation who will see and witness the return of the Lord. So when the Son of Man comes back, that He will find faith on the earth. So I believe for the next 7 years, the Lord is going to raise up a family of forerunners, young and old, who will give themselves to these three things. First is to the work of Jesus, to establish night and day prayer that will display an extravagant devotion to minister to His heart because He's worthy of it. The second thing I believe that they will respond to is to respond to the words of Jesus, that more than just preaching a sermon, but their life in itself is the message, that they'll become a voice in the wilderness, making straight the highway for the return of the Lord. And the third thing I believe that the Lord is going to use this family to do is to release a witness that when they give themselves to 9-day prayer, when they give themselves to the word of Jesus and to the words of Jesus, what is going to go forth from this place is the witness of God into the nations. Because we believe that as the gospel of the kingdom goes to the ends of the earth, the end will come. And my prayer is that the Lord will truly raise up many forerunners who will raise the standard of righteousness so that we will give our lives over to see this man receive his full reward in the nations. So I believe this is what the Lord is inviting us into for the next 7 years, to incubate a generation of young men and women to leave a legacy behind for the generations to come until the return of Jesus happen in our day and our age.